Hi, my name is Crisa Sotomayor. I'm the programming director for the Philadelphia Latino Film Festival. Thank you so much for coming to see this Q&A. We are so proud to be working with the Femme Frontera Filmmaker Showcase, co-presented by the festival and also by PhillyCAM, to bring an incredible program of short films. Before we begin with the Q&A, Angie Ters will speak a little bit about Femme Frontera and about the organization.
Hi, Crystal. Thank you so much for allowing us this space and time at the Philadelphia Festival. We're extremely happy and proud to be here. Yes, my name is Angie Ters. I am the executive director of Femme Frontera, which is a film organization located in El Paso, Texas. And our mission is to advocate for the amplification of films made by women, non-binary, and trans filmmakers from around the world, most especially those living on border communities, and also with an emphasis on Latinx and those living on our US-Mexico border. We have a variety of different programming, from education to the film festival to our tour that we take of the showcase every year. And then we provide small funds for short films being made in our region, always in support of the festival and of creating more content to be able to share. We also have a call for submissions coming up that was just actually open today. So now filmmakers can submit their short films for the film festival in November of 2021. So we're very excited about that. And again, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you so much, Angie. So again, the Femme Frontera Filmmaker Showcase Q&A is co-presented by the Philadelphia Latino Film Festival and PhillyCAM. So the showcase will be available on PhillyCAM throughout the month of May on Sundays at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time via their different platforms such as Xfinity 66, 966 HD, 967, Verizon 90 or 2930, Roku, Apple TV, and PhillyCAM TV on their website, phillycam.org. So we have a showcase of incredible films, and we have a few of the filmmakers here to speak with us on the Q&A. So first I will ask each of the filmmakers to introduce themselves. So let's do it popcorn style. So I'm going to start with Jackie.
Hey. Hi, how are you? Thank you so much for having us. We're super excited to be a part of this year's festival. My name is Jackie Barragan. I'm the tour coordinator for Femme Frontera and also a filmmaker. I'm the filmmaker for a short film called Josie. It's a film about my mother's story. And so when you see this showcase, you'll be able to see that film as well.
Ebony.
Hi everybody, my name is Ebony. I'm from Central California and I'm a filmmaker, and my short film in the showcase is Jamaica Tamarindo, and it's about Afro-Mexican heritage through these two ingredients, Jamaica Tamarindo.
Hi everybody, I'm Xochitl Rodriguez, pronouns are she and ella. I am from El Paso, born and raised on the border, and I'm now raising my daughter, Callista. My film is Grown Without Water, and it's a bit of a poem, and it's very much about what I've experienced in these first years raising my daughter, but also the threads that bind women across generations as they raise the next generation.
Angie?
Yeah, I mean, I am a filmmaker. I do not have a film in this showcase, but I'm just really happy to be here to represent Femme Frontera.
Okay, great. And Angie, we would love your perspective on these questions as well, or even on your programming insight on the selection of the films as well. I think that would be really invaluable for people watching the showcase. So first of all, I'm going to ask each of the filmmakers, and you can go ahead and respond. What was your inspiration behind the creation of your film?
I'll jump in, I guess. This was actually my first film. I had worked on film projects prior to this, I would say the inspiration was a bit layered. Of course, it was a culminating element was having my daughter and specifically raising her during some very hard years in El Paso and Juarez, particularly when it came to children and the way our communities were nurturing them and welcoming them, or in the case of El Paso and Juarez, unfortunately, harming them with really unfathomable immigration policies. I worked for the Texas Senate, so I have a lot of hats, and was working specifically in immigration policy, and I'm activated in the community. So I was attending a lot of events, and my daughter would come with me to some, and at a certain point I stopped taking her, and we stopped crossing the border to Juarez together. And it was a heart-wrenching decision that I had to make to stop crossing. But it was also it just presented such a challenge for me as a mother that I don't know that my mother, right, of all the challenges she faced, even she said it was nothing she would ever have imagined me having to see as a child, what was happening here on our border. And so it pushed me into this space of beginning to draw parallels of different experiences in brown families. And we have our own family history of some devastating life experiences and some catastrophic accidents. And so I began to sort of draw these parallels on how we survive and how we persevere. You know, the world likes to call us resilient, and I actually can't stand that word. I would love a world where we didn't have to be resilient. And that wasn't some prize that we got after surviving, right? Like systemic inequity and systemic violence, essentially, right? So it took me a while to land where I did with the film. It had to find its way, and its way ended up being me very vulnerably sharing my experience becoming a mother, and how that experience was formed not only by my own mother and grandmother, but by the women around me who were also raising children at this time on our border, on both sides of the border. And you know, most especially, I think you know, women that are going through it, whether it's, you know, within their personal circle or the work that they do, or all of it combined. I found that the way that we rise and the way we have continued to rise as brown women was through these incredible lessons that we don't even know we're receiving from the moment we're born.
Okay, I guess
I'll
I'll go.
also add, I want to add, because Jackie and I had some similar, right, we had some parallels in the film, because her film is also about her mother, and my mom makes an appearance in mine. And when I think of Jamaica Tamarindo, like it's all of this knowledge, right, that's constantly being passed and shared. And sometimes our generation doesn't know where it's coming from. We just know we're receiving it. And I do think actively, right, like seeing the filmmakers and what we looked at in these different films, we're actively trying to understand where we came from. We're actively trying to understand how we got where we are, painful as that may be at times, or elusive as it may be. I found that was a really important word in this process. Even though everything is confronting us, especially in El Paso Juarez, daily, right in our face, it still eludes us somehow. Understanding it, grasping it, figuring out how to navigate it is still such an elusive process. So yeah, I just wanted to tip that way in terms of connecting some of the common themes.
Yeah, so I too am a first-time filmmaker, but just have always had, I mean, this is the story of my mother, so this is, her story has influenced me since day one, since I was very little and started to try to make sense of the world. And I just knew that, you know, growing older and seeing what is represented in the media and in film and in TV shows, it was obvious to me the lack of representation of stories that I could relate to and connect to as a woman of color, as a Mexican American Chicana woman, and you know, and then also going through the education, getting my degree and going to public school as a kid, and just seeing also how you know, the books that are given to us are pretty limited when it comes to our stories. And I just felt this responsibility to to start to share and document my own history, because it won't be documented if unless we do it ourselves. It'll just go lost in the ethers if we don't start documenting our history. And you know, I look at my mother through the eyes of, you know, as one of my heroes. And you know, that's one of the other things that's lacking, is seeing these like role models for young, you know, Chicana brown women, especially other women role models who look like me. And my mother is one of those people for me. And so her story, you know, is just a very inclusive. So many themes go along with her story, with being you know, an immigrant coming over the border from Mexico and having to deal with poverty and racism, and then inevitably, unfortunately, an attack, a sexual abuse attack, and also growing up around it, seeing her sisters go through it, seeing her mother go through it, and you know, seeing that repetition of generational trauma being passed down, with no outlet or resources to deal or cope. Not even she, you know, her and my tia in the film talk about how they just, once people found out, nothing happened, and how, so it also touches on how the justice system is failing us when it comes to sexual abuse and rape. And so my mom, you know, through frustration, and we see it through her eyes, how can you, the type of like PTSD and anger that grows inside of you when you feel like nothing's being done. And it ended up fueling her to study martial arts in Juarez. And so her story is very much a trans border story. You know, she goes back and forth between Juarez and El Paso, and she studied the martial arts and got really good at it, because she was fueled by something very very deep within her. And so yeah, and she ended up you know, becoming an incredible martial artist and going through her belts really rapidly. And you know, I remember hearing the story as a teenager and being like, oh my gosh, you're a badass, and it's kind of unbelievable. And so I would tell my friends, and you know, I had to show them. Luckily I had proof, because it just, to me, it's like it's just an unbelievable story. I had pictures and newspaper clippings, and you know, my dad, he was a journalist for UTEP during that time. He worked for the Prospector, so he always had a camera on him. And if it wasn't for him, I would not have the photos that I had that I included in the documentary. And so yeah, I'm very lucky that he documented a tiny little bit of her experience. So in the end, you know, her quest was to seek retribution. And I also feel like, you know, psychologically that might be very hard for people to understand, you know, and I see it as also a result of PTSD, as a result of the frustration towards the justice system. And those emotions of wanting to see someone pay for what they've done is a very natural response, especially when you're not receiving any kind of help. And you know, fast forward to my experience, I'm also a survivor, you know, of sexual abuse, and I was just super aware of the holes that exist in our justice system, period, around everything, you know, from you know, immigration stories, and how, you know, our migrant family members are being treated, and especially when it comes to sexual abuse. And so this was my way to kind of show that we still have a lot of work to be done. You know, there's still a lack of spaces created for women to, and any, you know, people who are victims of sexual abuse to come forward and to feel safe, and to feel like, you know, maybe something, you know, justice will be served in some way or another. There's just so much work to be done around it. And, you know, one thing that I think is important is that it's, you know, it took my tia many years. She's in her early 70s to speak. And that is her choice. And, you know, with the Me Too movement, a lot of what I hear around so long. And that's no one's decision except for the person themselves, that they should be able to speak whenever they're ready, if they ever want to speak at all. It's no wonder that people don't, because we don't have spaces of support that are built into our systems yet. And, you know, I just want this to be a film to get the conversation going around that.
Hi. So the inspiration for this film, I guess this is my second short film about the topic of Blackness in Mexico. The first was about Black migrants in the Tijuana, at the Tijuana border, and then this one is just about general Afro-Mexicanidad, Afro-Mexican heritage, Afro-heritage in Mexico, through these two ingredients. And so the inspiration kind of came from wanting to just follow up on the first doc that I did. And this is also my thesis film for my grad school program. I went to school at UNAM in Mexico City. So this is my thesis project. And yeah, the inspiration, it goes back from, from when I was a child and I grew up as Blaxican. I consider myself Blaxican. My mom's Mexican American, my dad's African American, and I grew up in a very Mexican American town. And even though I felt, very Mexican American in my family, whenever I would go to school, the kids would definitely let me know that I was Black. And my school was like 99% Mexican and Mexican American. So kind of just when I went to Mexico and I met other Afro-Mexicans, we had these like similar experiences of growing up, of having part of our identities being erased, having our Mexicanidad being negated by other Mexicans. And then kind of learning that has to do with historical erasure of the Mexican state, erasing Afro heritage and Blackness and Black people, and kind of casting Black people as always being foreigners. And so this kind of like culminates in the documentary with the two ingredients, Jamaica y Tamarindo, which are, I grew up drinking agua de Jamaica and eating the tamarindos, and I always thought that those were Mexican ingredients. Like I grew up eating those and drinking those, and they were just Mexican. And it wasn't until I started researching for this documentary, because it wasn't initially called Jamaica Tamarindo. It was just going to be like this general big idea that you always need to start like focusing in, when you develop your work. But at first it was like this general big idea. And one of my friends who actually comes out in the film, Leona, she's the one with the braids in the film. She was like, did you know that Flor de Jamaica is from Africa? And I didn't know that. And so that night I kind of went into the internet rabbit hole of looking up about the origins of Flor de Jamaica. And from there, I just kept focusing down and knew I always wanted to keep La Flor de Jamaica like a really important part of the film. And then later I also learned that Tamarindo also originates from the African continent and also West Asia. And so from there, it kind of just became Jamaica y Tamarindo. And these two ingredients kind of act as metaphors to talk about Black presence and Black erasure in Mexico. And you kind of see, it's not necessarily about those two ingredients, but they're metaphors. And then through that, we meet Afro-Mexicans who all live in Mexico City, but who all have different backgrounds in their Blackness. Some are from Oaxaca, some are from Mexico City. One of them, their parents are from Africa. So there's also like different generations of Blackness. Some are more recent migrants, and then some have been in Mexico since Mexico also participated in this transatlantic slave trade. So yeah, that was kind of the inspiration. Is a very personal project, but also just like learning more about Afro-Mexicanidad. Because like I said, I grew up in California. And I always saw, I never even really knew about Afro-Mexicans until I started getting older. Like for me, I was just Blaxican. Like my dad was Black and my mom was Mexican. So just learning about Afro-Mexicans too, and like establishing that kinship, I think was really beautiful in the making of the film.
Yeah, thank you all for sharing about your process. And I think, a theme that was really present for me was, identity, belonging, ancestry. And so I really wanted to ask Angie, what was your process behind curating these films for the showcase?
Yeah, so every year, you know, I think at the beginning of Femme Frontera, we're about to go on our 6th season, but at the beginning, you know, we tried to sort of set a theme every year that in which, you know, we would curate around that theme. And quickly we realized that that wasn't the way to go, because the submissions that we receive actually inform what theme we're going to get that year. And, you know, it's what is on everyone's mind. It's what's happening at the moment. And so, you know, we always feel really blessed when we receive films like these from Jackie and Xochitl and Ebony, that are so powerful and that speak so much to our community, our, as you said, identity, our ancestry. And then we start finding common themes as well throughout all of these films that we can integrate together and that will play really well together. But we'll also, you know, be there to lift up each other's voices collectively. I think that that's really important. So, you know, each year we kind of don't know what we're going to get that year. And you know, we start, like I said, we start seeing a pattern, we start seeing a theme develop, and then we start, you know, bringing the films together around that. But, you know, I feel like every year the films get better and better. And these documentaries were just so I could relate to them, but I also learned from them. They also made me cry. They made me laugh at times. You know, they're just so well done. And so, you know, we were very lucky to have these 3 films, especially play together next to each other, is just amazing. It's a happy accident that you can't plan and that you can't curate yourself. It involves everyone working as a team and working together. I mean, Femme Frontera wouldn't exist if it weren't for filmmakers like these. And the rest of the showcase as well is so incredibly powerful. And everybody has their own perspective, and even on similar topics. And so, you know, but it takes a certain type of person to provide that vulnerability on screen and be open and willing to provide that vulnerability. It takes a lot of courage, as you can see from the filmmakers who are here today. So yeah, we're just very blessed in that way as an organization.
I would add, and I always want to lift this up every time we have a chance to talk about Femme Frontera specifically. I feel like we're in a time right now, right, where voices like ours collectively on this call, and then of course across the spectrum of beautiful diversity in the Latinx community, are finally creating our own spaces. I want to be really clear to say that, right? We've had to create them ourselves, where our stories can live and exist. And in my case, and I know Jackie, you and I have shared about this a little bit, and of course, Ebony, for you too, since this was your second project, this was such a beautiful opportunity to learn how to tell a story that I didn't know how to tell, to learn how to look for the story and pull the story apart and rip it apart and destroy it and like claim it again and again and again until it was exactly the story I wanted to tell, exactly the story I knew I needed to tell. And I just like, I can't speak enough about what an opportunity Femme Frontera presents in letting us have the space to do that. It doesn't exist anywhere else, in my opinion. I've had the fortune and the pleasure to do a lot of artwork in a lot of different places, and Femme Frontera is the most unique and special space I've ever created it. And so I just want to lift that up, Angie, and make sure that I champion not just our showcase, but the years of work I've been watching you do with Femme Frontera.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Like I said, I mean, it exists because of this mutually beneficial atmosphere that we've created for ourselves. And like you said, I mean, yeah, spaces, you know, we don't often sometimes get invited to the table. So you build your own, and it's an honor to be sitting with all of these ladies here today and from the past 6 years.
Yeah, thank you so much for that. We are kind of running out of time, so I quickly wanted to ask one last question. So as women filmmakers, you know, what are challenges that you face in making these films, and how do you think that women can be supported in making their filmmaking and making their films possible. And you can all speak to this, I believe.
I mean, as a mother, my film is about mothering, and it's about the collective threads like across motherhood in my own community. As a mother and a filmmaker and an artist, I don't necessarily just call myself a filmmaker. It's incredibly challenging to carve the space, to find, opportunities where I'm not having to work for free, taking hours away that I don't have. I find that, and I feel like it's not very sexy to talk about that, right? Like, damn, this time management thing is really hard, but it's the hardest. And I feel like I excel at it. I have a full-time job that I hold down with Planned Parenthood, but it's still, it's insane. And I wouldn't necessarily say, right, like I could go and walk onto a production team or join a team and be able to have the flexibility I had making this film, which I was the producer, director, I was in, my DP flew out to El Paso to film for a whole week and was completely malleable based on, when my daughter was going to be up for shooting, all of it, all the moving parts. That is just like not a reasonable expectation to have, because the industry and the world at large is not built for that, right? So I think as a mother, speaking to that piece of the creative process, it can feel just so defeating and impossible because the world's not built for us to be, as productive as folks who don't have children or families or those kinds of responsibilities.
Yeah, I had the intention at the beginning when I was writing my storyboard and starting to envision how I was going to do this. I wanted it to be a predominantly female production team. And that was my initial intention. But then COVID hit, and then I realized that I was going to have to do a lot on my own. And the people who were available, who weren't mothers, who didn't have like these pools, and also just, men dominate every industry. And so I had to reach out to my male friends, which I'm very grateful for them. They were so supportive and helpful, but really put things into perspective about who we're getting taught by, who's kind of, passing down the skill set. And in my case, I had to just kind of accept the fact that I'm going to learn from some dudes. And whatever it comes with, hey, I have cramps today and I want to chill and I want to rest. And like, no, you can't. Well, you don't know how it feels, so you're going to let me do that, So, but in all, honestly, working with these particular guys, they were actually men who are very sympathetic and empathetic towards feminism and understanding the lack of representation in the film industry. And so that's why they wanted to help me. Hazael Anaya and Steve Osborne, Hazael Anaya especially is like, we need to hear more female voices. So let me show you a thing or two, and that was very humbling, and also, an eye-opener on making films. But I feel like Femme Frontera is one of those organizations that's incredibly radical and ahead of its time, because it's creating the space for us and uniting us to build these structures and networks to work together. Like I envisioned going onto a set and there being, a hired, like a daycare on set, so that mothers can direct and produce and have know their children are okay, and a more humane type of way of creating, because it's everywhere. Before this, I was working in a restaurant and as a bartender, and like it's also like you can't use the bathroom, you got to hurry up and hustle, you don't have enough time to pee, and it's just a very unhealthy way of working that I think it does come from the fact that it's men who have kind of built these structures. And we're here to challenge that and change it. And Femme Frontera is like a perfect example of that. We need to start really lifting each other up as women and not be in competition. And this is a beautiful example here, how Femme Frontera brings us together, and we're here, pushing each other and supporting each other and encouraging each other. And just that alone, I wouldn't have been able to make my film if I didn't have that type of support from the women around me.
Yeah, I think that for myself, I've been pretty fortunate, at least in my projects, of collaborating with mostly, if not 100%, now that I think about it, women and trans folks with my projects. And I've had experiences where I'm on set for like commercials and things like that. And just like the casual misogyny that just happens on set is just something that I just don't want. That energy I do not want in my own projects.
The moment when you're like, oh, you really just did that. You really,
right.
this girl really just said that.
Right. It's just like sometimes it's just very wow. Like I can't believe that you just said that.
Totally.
Yeah, so I have thought about that at least for you know my own projects, definitely like cultivating these spaces of like folks who have like similar, you know, worldviews as I do, if that makes sense. I do have like some, yeah, like what Jackie was saying, like some men friends who have also collaborated with me, and I'm very grateful for their collaboration, but also the same where they're like sympathetic or understanding of like feminist issues. But I do think that it is something that we have here, and it's something that we've also been building in our projects of like cultivating these spaces of women and trans folks and stuff like that. And I think that, yeah, for myself, like this next film that I'm working on, we are all like mostly, if not all, women and trans folks. And so I think that it's just so beautiful what can come out, what can come out of that too. Yeah, it's nice.
Yeah, I mean, you know, I've been just through working in Femme Frontera, the amount of women that are all over the world, that are of color, that are Latinx, that are in border communities. There's a lot. There's a lot of women creating. And I think that even when someone says the word filmmaker, I think sadly still the majority of people think of a white male in that role, in that position. And
interestingly enough, Angie, because you're talking about like words, right? I think when people hear filmmaker, they see man. When they hear storyteller, they see a woman, which like how bent is that system, right? Like, well, here it is. Here's all the truth. Now you make it. It's like, that's the role.
yeah, no, thank you for saying that. That's so true. You know, and so for me, the amount of women that I've met and non-binary persons and trans people, you know, it's we really have to start erasing our perceptions that are so limited constantly by, you know, what we see in Hollywood. I mean, Hollywood is not the end all be all, you know, for what filmmakers are and who they are. And so, you know, I think it's even shaped my own perceptions on what these spaces can be and already are. And so, you know, that's sort of been my perspective in like I said, just working in this community and continuing to be part of building it and showing it for what it is. So it's already there. It just, you know, it's just very nice to be able to have a space and call it, you know, women and non-binary and trans-based and celebrate that and allow this to be a space where others can come and utilize it and feel supported within it. So yeah, that's all I have to say about that.
Great. Thank you all so much. I feel so inspired by this panel, and maybe we can do one more final, very quick, one word, only one word. What do you hope audiences learn and experience from your film and from the program as a whole? And perhaps we should start with Ebony, since you keep going last. So let's start with Ebony. Do you need one more second? Do you want to go second?
Second.
Okay. So who wants to go first?
I'll go. I hope the audience experiences and learns more compassion.
I hope the audience experiences and learns more solidarity.
All right. I hope the audience experiences and learns and feels courageous.
And for me, empathy and the ability to see how we're so much more similar than different.
Yes, thank you all again. And thank you to Angie and Jackie for putting this together with Femme Frontera. Truly, it is beautiful to see the film industry changing. You know, this is the beginning of the change to come, to bring in more women, non-binary and trans voices to the forefront. So thank you all again, and please check out the Femme Frontera Showcase on PhillyCAM. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.